The Boneyard, Short Fictions of the Morbid and Macabre, written by Jonathan Dunne, narrated for you by the author. Blindspot. Horror wears many masks. One person's horror is another's delight. What scares some people makes others laugh. I would like to introduce you to my very own horror, and it doesn't involve serial killers, witches, ghouls, goblins, or gushes of crimson blood. But it does involve a tiny black spot. At least it started with a tiny black spot, floating about in whatever direction I looked. A black spot warning of a blind spot on a winding country road. Ironic. That black spot hung over me for weeks until it grew into a shadow on the edge of my vision, faint but undeniable. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, but this shadow grew, creeping inward day by day, gnawing at the corners of my sight like a relentless fog. I kept telling myself it was nothing, stress, perhaps, or too much screen time. In other words, I was looking for excuses. But with each passing day, the nagging sense of dread crept heavier, and by the time I finally did see a doctor, this shadow had spread across half my vision, a somber black veil swallowing my world. "We'll need to run some tests," the ophthalmologist said, her voice calm but her eyes betraying something she wasn't saying aloud. They dilated my pupils with eye drops, shone lights so bright they made me wince, took scans of my retinas and a CT of my brain. The machines hummed and beeped, oblivious to the panic building inside me. Blind panic. Pun intended. And the technicians performing those tests weren't far behind the cold machines with their clinical, detached, and not-so-lovable ways. The results were inconclusive. "It's unusual," the doctor admitted, her brow furrowed. "Your eyes look healthy, both in front and behind. We'll need to monitor it." Unusual. That word hung in the air, cold and foreboding. It was unusual, all right. It was unusual for a seasoned ophthalmologist to say that word, unusual. As the days went by, the shadow continued to spread. Colours dulled, edges blurred, until entire objects seemed to vanish when I turned my head to look at them. When I tried to focus on something, it disappeared into a portal, yet I could see the object if I looked slightly away. Being a danger to myself, as well as everybody else on that winding road, I was forced to stop driving, forced by myself. Up until now, I hadn't told anyone about the growing veil of darkness separating me from the rest of the world. But I knew that was only a matter of days before I would have to speak to someone, after all. The same people I was keeping my blindness from were the same people I would come to lean on, no pun intended, quite soon. But whatever about friends and family, I needed money to pay my bills. I dreaded speaking to Trish, my boss at the office, but I had no choice, and the sooner the better. We had a heart-to-heart about the situation. It was a relief to get my affliction out in the open. I'd been keeping it to myself, and it was turning stagnant inside me. Trish is a real dear, and despite my growing blindness, I could see the tears well in her eyes as I told her the events that led me up to our conversation in her office, even though she tried to hide those tears by blaming her allergies. She knew, and I knew, but we said nothing, because that's the kind of relationship we had, at the office and away from it. We've always been close. Trish gave me the option of working from home. I was so thankful for the chance and promised her I could get everything done. For now I was thankful, and grasped any good news like hanging on to a life buoy in the topsy-turvy ocean. I truly believed it when I made the promise, but it would be only a matter of time before the veil swallowed my computer screen too. By now I was already living in permanent dusk during daylight hours. As the nights drew in, so the veil thickened. After sundown, I was left scrambling about my house, room to room, falling over things, feeling my way around despite having all the lights switched on. I made a point of keeping the floors as clear as possible, avoiding anything I could trip over. I needed more lighting. My only saving grace was that I could still just about see a computer screen if I enlarged everything. So I ordered extra lights and bright bulbs to shed some light on the situation, pun intended, just to stave off the encroaching darkness. The growing dread never left me. The world was slipping away, and the worst part of this metamorphosis was that no one could tell me why this was happening to me. The helplessness and desperation was agonizing to the point of pining, as if I was homesick. It was only a matter of time before I would see my last sunset, and forever night would take me. Never seeing a sunrise again affected me more than I thought, because I'd always associated a sunrise with hope and another precious chance to make things right. And so my horror truly began, when I realized my loved ones, friends and family, were slowly dissolving before my eyes. Think about that for a second. Because a second is all I recommend, and all you need to feel that sudden surge of blind panic, thinking you're losing everything and everyone you've ever known, frozen in time. Nieces and nephews will grow up to become adults with adult voices, but will always be the same kids in your special time machine eyes. Like I said, horror wears many masks. My mother's warm smile, my brother's teasing grin, my father's concerned eyes. They were my anchor, anchoring me into reality. But this ocean of darkness was sweeping everything away, and the heavy anchor was no match for this black tide. It was at this juncture when I was obliged to leave my rented apartment and go back to living with my parents. It was a devastating blow, but I sure appreciated their support. No sooner was I back at home when they began to disappear. Not all at once, but in pieces, like an old sun-bleached photograph left out in the sun too long. My mother's face would disappear mid-sentence, her features swallowed up into the encroaching shadow portal, as I like to call it. It's very difficult to describe that floating black patch that follows my line of vision. It's kind of like a wriggling shadow of pins and needles, if I were to describe it as a physical feeling. I don't know why, but I'm reminded of a writhing mass of clicking ants. Like I said, horror wears many masks. My brother's laughter grew to be a faint echo, unreachable, far away. My best friend's hand was no longer solid when it grasped mine, but became a phantom's hand, because I could no longer see the owner of that hand, or when it was going to slip into mine. I begged them to stay and cried myself to sleep every night. But of course it was me who was leaving, not them. That explained the hollow, raw homesickness. I reached out, shouting their names, but my hands passed through them as if they were made of smoke. I was left with nothing but the sound of their voices, until even those sounds grew faint and warped, as if from a record slowed to some haunting crawl. And that was when the dreams started. At first they were fleeting glimpses of darkness, some void stretching endlessly in every direction. I woke up gasping, clutching my chest, trying to catch my breath, heart racing. Only I didn't wake up. When you're reading this, you might imagine yourself in my position, or perhaps you see me waking up in my bedroom. But when you wake up, you see the room around you, and you're relieved, and you feel safe once again. Or maybe you see me wake up in my bedroom with the same sense of relief on waking up. Wrong. So wrong. The reality is that I wake up into more darkness. The night has brought my blindness closer. By now I can only see with the help of sunlight. Once the sun sets, I am taken down into the valley of shadows. But then the dreams got worse, more vivid. In them the darkness wasn't empty, it was alive. I was becoming blind, but within the blindness I began to see and hear things I never saw or heard while I had my vision. A whole new world was opening up to me beyond the veil. Within that darkness, hushed whispers came, serpentine whispers speaking a language I did not understand but somehow knew was meant for me. Voices, not quite human. Voices which did not try to sound human, went into my ears, racking my brain, burrowing into my mind. I woke to find their echo still there, faint but unmistakable. The only way I can describe these voices are the faint warbled voices heard on those old shortwave radios, haunting voices coming in on radio frequencies from around the world. And one night, following the haunting voices coming through the veil of darkness, I woke up not in a screaming panic, but blind. The world was gone. No light, no shapes, only an endless oppressive darkness. I scratched at my eyes, convinced that they were shut, but no matter how wide I opened them, nothing changed. In the middle of the night, a hyperventilating panic attack took hold as I reeled through my childhood house, smashing into furniture and tripping over cords. I screamed out for help, but the only voice I heard was my own. And then I heard it, the whisper I'd been waiting for. I know that is difficult to understand, but deep down I was expecting this voice to come a calling. And it was no dream this time either. The voice was here. It was in the very bedroom with me, soft and silvery. "We've been waiting," it said. I couldn't move, holding in my breath without realizing it until I grew dizzy. "Who's there?" I called out into the darkness in a strained whisper. The response came from all directions, in stereo surround sound, settling upon me, engulfing me. "You see us now." As I tuned in that soft voice, I began to realize it belonged to an elderly woman. "I can't see anything," I whispered. My knees buckled and I sank to the floor trembling. "Look deep in the darkness, my child. There, at the end of the black veil. Let your eyes see for the first time. Accept who you were always meant to be, from the moment you opened your eyes in the darkness of Duffy's womb." I froze on hearing that name. An icy shard of fear gripped me, and I couldn't bring myself to look in the direction of that old woman's voice that was sounding strangely familiar. Who are you?" I stammered. "Don't be afraid, Clopie. People's lives are marked by certain events. Hearing my childhood nickname was my certain event. I wanted to scream on hearing my baby nickname. I'm not sure if I told you, but my actual name is Chloe. There was only one person who called me Clopie, my grandmother, who took care of me as a baby, becoming my second mother while my mother was working at the local computer factory. I earned that nickname as a baby in the womb and later outside it, when and where I spent most of my time asleep with my eyes closed. And God knows what I was seeing and listening to in the darkness of my mother's womb, and later in my mother's room, in my cozy cradle. I was a dopey baby. So Gran put Chloe and Dopey together and came up with Clopie. Gran? That's right, Clopie. Can you see us? I stared into the darkness, but I could see nothing. Us? Yes, my child. Pappy is here too. My chin began to tremble on hearing the very nickname I gave my grandfather. Through blind, teary eyes I asked, "Pappy?" "Yes, Chloe. It's me. We're all here." I felt dizzy on hearing his voice I haven't heard since the car crash took their lives. Even then I only remembered because of the videos we liked to rewatch during certain times of the year, like Christmas and on what would have been their birthdays. That was when my mother felt the sting of not having them around the most. The authorities said it happened so fast they wouldn't have even had time to react or realize when that juggernaut steering failed and ploughed into their little Suzuki going in the opposite direction on the motorway. I wanted to ask them if that was true, and if they suffered. But now that I had this strange opportunity, I wasn't so sure I wanted to know the answer anymore. "We are all here," said Pappy in a reassuring whisper, "and we have all been waiting to speak to and through you." These haunting words sent my skin shivering. "Why through me?" "Yes, you can speak through the veil," Gran answered. As she answered, silhouettes began to materialize out of the darkness. I could see the outlines of their shapes, blacker than the veil, fizzling in as opposed to fizzling out. That's how I would describe how they came filing into the bedroom in my mind's eye. Gran spoke quietly again. Clopie, you are a seer. There are a lot of people who want to meet the seer. They have been waiting a long time to get their message over the other side of the veil. Some have been here a lot longer than Pappy and myself. They watched you, and you watched them as you grew in your mother's womb. I always thought there was something special about you. From the moment you were born, this house changed. Your birth haunted this house, Clopie. You have the gift of true sight. You see what others can't. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And then they came to me, the dead, with their requests.